Hello and welcome everybody. This is the Special Investigators series and I am very honored to have a very special guest on tonight. This is Richard Lighthouse, a former NASA engineer and an author who has investigated the crimes committed against targeted individuals. He has used his engineering expertise to really uncover the people involved and the technologies involved. And he has some mind-blowing revelations that will be relevant to all of us worldwide, and most especially to all the people who are victims and who are preparing court cases. So please join me in welcoming Richard Lighthouse. Hello, Richard.
Hello, Catherine, and thank you for having me on today.
You know, it's such a great honor, and I have to confess we're starting later than announced because I was just picking your brain and your knowledge over all these details. And I have to say, just in this conversation we had just now, there were so many wow moments for me and so many revelations. It really opened my eyes. One of the things I wanted to ask you is, how did you get into this entire investigation? I mean, in what year, when did it start for you? When did you realize something was going on? And what was your background story that led you here?
That's a good question, and I can briefly answer it, but we do have pending litigation, so I don't want to try to reveal too much, but I will say that I have been researching this since January of 2016. I am a government whistleblower. I was aware of corruption that was happening within the FBI and the CIA, and I reported it to a number of senators and congressmen. And so I've been researching this since about January 2016.
That is incredible, and I have to say, for having researched it since 2016, I mean, just in the last 2 years roughly, it's just incredible how much you have uncovered. So what would you like to start with, because you have so many breathtaking revelations? Which of the topics shall we launch into? What would you like to start with first?
Well, I'd like to start with what I think is a real game changer, and I'll hold this up if people can see it. This is one of the flyers that we're putting out. Mm-hmm. And you'll notice the famous head side profile, and we're trying to make people aware that everyone in the United States, and I suspect many or most or even all in Europe, are also similarly being tracked. But every test we have done here in the United States strongly suggests the family members, the manipulation that we see is all done because everyone is already being tracked. It's a very simple test. The pulses are about once per second, and they're focused on the top back part of the head, and you can feel these very easily with your knuckles. So I'm going to turn sideways and show you. If you place your knuckles right over that top back part of your head and hold it there for about 30 seconds to a minute, you will feel your knuckles will start to heat up. Now, a lot of people, when I tell them this, they put their hand on there for 2 seconds. They go, I don't feel anything. Well, your microwave oven doesn't heat anything within 2 seconds. So it takes a little bit of time for it to heat up. So you have to place your hand there and hold it for about 30 seconds to 60 seconds. And you'll start feeling the pops in your knuckles and the cartilage of your hand. Once you notice it the first time, it's a real wow moment. And the thing is, everyone is being tracked 24 hours a day. That's how they're able to manipulate family members and friends and coworkers and people in traffic even. We've heard a number of stories where traffic TIs are being corralled on a freeway and they can't get out because the cars are all, and they can't understand how they're doing that. How do they know how to do that? Well, it's the majority of these people are not willing perps. They're completely unaware of what's going on. They're simply being directed with subliminal messaging. And that's why it's very important for TIs to understand that most of the perp activity that they think is going on, these people don't have a clue what's going on. And when you challenge them and confront them, you're likely to end up feeling foolish because these people genuinely do not know what's going on. They are certainly not willing perps. They are victims and they're being manipulated just like your family members. So the reason this is such a game changer is because even CIA and FBI agents are tracked, police officers, congressmen, senators. That's why it's important to get this out there. We don't need sympathy as TIs. We need to get this information out and say everyone is being tracked. The microwaves cause brain damage. We know that from a number of medical studies. So we need to get people on our side. We don't have to beg for sympathy or help. We simply need to educate them that you are being tracked and targeted. Everyone is in on it. I was at Home Depot here a week and a half ago, and generally there's immigrants that work in the parking lot and look to pick up construction work. And I just started chatting with the two of them and told them to try this. Put your hand on the back of your head and hold it there. I'd like to know if you feel anything. And he went, within seconds, he went, "What is that?" And anyway, I asked them how long they had been in the country, and they said, just a few weeks. So it's clear that you don't have to be in the country for very long, and they start tracking you. It's very possible that I think one of these gentlemen came from Honduras and one from Mexico, and they were clearly being tracked. They could feel the microwave pulses. So I've tried family members, I've tried friends, I've tried total strangers. It takes a little bit of nudging sometime, but what's very clear is everyone is being tracked. So we've got to get that information out. We're not trying to look for sympathy. We don't need public funds to help us. We simply need to convince them that they are being tracked and targeted too. Everyone is a targeted individual. That's the game changer. Everyone, even FBI agents, they are being tracked. So we've got to get that fundamental idea out there. It is a game changer. So I encourage people to download these flyers or make your own. We post them online at Targeted Justice. They're also available on ourlighthouse.com. They're free. All of the books that I have for targeted individuals on my website at ourlighthouse.com, all of my ebooks are free for targeted individuals. In fact, most of the books that I've published are free, regardless of the subject matter. So I encourage people to go there, download them. They're free. I welcome comments and suggestions on that because we want to get that information out.
So already on that topic, I can certainly confirm a lot of the things that you said. So for example, when you mentioned that even FBI and CIA agents are being tracked, one of the things I would like to say about that is they were the first ones to be tracked. And I know that from a microwave weapon expert who has worked for the military, and he confirmed that so the people are being tracked by several ways, certainly the regular pulses to the heads, but already in the 60s and 70s, pilots and agents were serially chipped. So they were being tracked with chipping as well. And then certainly these two types of tracking are one step up. So this is one thing. The other thing I can confirm is that I am here in Switzerland and I have been shot and pulsed now in almost all the countries of Central Europe. So I have traveled to Italy, where I was assaulted and tracked, Germany, Austria, Hungary, Romania, Belgium, Netherlands, France, and the UK. These are all countries that I have visited in the past 2 years, and the tracking is certainly present, the pulsing, and it's also being combined with ground level shots, so very close by horizontal shots that one can feel. But I think this type of tracking from above is pretty much continuous. The other thing, one caveat I would like to say though, is that it is not just, I think a lot of people are being tracked and can be influenced through this technology, and I think we can say a lot more about that. But I also personally have observed that there's a lot of coordination between the people who would be swarming us, and there's already testimonies from German intel agents about the fact that, for example, motorways and motorway stations would have if you like, almost stationary personnel. So there are people swarming the motorways. They're driving up and down. And there are areas where we would have the national surveillance system anyway. And these are trained people, and they exchange hand signs. We also have the advertising of the Canadian intelligence agencies and the British intelligence agencies looking for pretty much gang stalkers. This is what the adverts say. They're looking for gang stalkers. So we do have that as well. However, I can also confirm that I saw my own parents being taken over, literally within moments. And with takeover, I mean, they were acting, they were shouting at me that I really thought, right, I'm going to not quite get killed, but be slapped. It was totally out of character for my parents. And when I changed position in the room, they continued shouting at the empty room. So they were completely neurologically taken over. So I'm very, very curious to find out how that actually works. What I wanted to do is I wanted to share my screen, and I wanted to point people to your website, because I would like everybody to bring it up now, to bookmark it. So I would like you all to go to our Lighthouse, so letter R and then lighthouse.com. And that's Richard's excellent website. And most importantly, I would like to point you to the store here, because all the books that Richard has written, and I tell you, they contain mind-blowing information, really excellent information. It's divided in technical ebooks, elementary particles. Here, down here, the deep state section, that's probably one that's very important. And I guess for today, the most topical is the one here. It's this one here, Air Force and Space Command. And I just would like to emphasize to all our viewers, you can get this book here for free. And what you have to do is you go down here, you say add to cart. And then when you go to the checkout, you just have to give an email address. You don't have to give a credit card, okay? I just want everybody to know. So I just typed in my email address, and then, you know, fill this out, and then click next, and you can skip the payment information. Just keep clicking next, and in the end, you'll be sent a download link, and you'll also be emailed the download link, and you can get hold of this book straight away. And I really recommend that everybody have a look at this this book, because the information in there you can use for your court cases. And please have a look, because I think a lot of things that Richard is going to talk about today, you can find the evidence and the references, everything you need right in there. Sorry, Richard, I just wanted to push that in there so that people know how to get hold of your information. And actually, this diagram that you showed, that that points at the back of the head. So let me just bring it up here. So this is the flyer that you showed. And I had one question about that, which is because, for example, when I'm being attacked, sorry, where's the image? This one here. When I'm being attacked, I can feel pulses to this point, but I can also feel similar pulses to other points on my scalp. So is this point special here?
We think that point is where the precise GPS coordinates are obtained, and then that information is relayed to the cell towers, and then all of the cell towers here in the United States, I can only speak for the United States. If there are a dozen cell towers around you within 2 miles, every one of them will target the center of your head, and the way they get those coordinates is from the GPS tracking on the top back of your head. So the cell towers themselves would not be that accurate if it wasn't for the GPS tracking by these satellites in orbit. We know from social media, there's a number of Air Force personnel that had accounts on LinkedIn. One of them claimed that there are 1,300 operational personnel at Schriever Air Force Base that are involved with 7 satellite constellations and 9 weapon systems. All of that's done out of Schriever Air Force Base. We don't have a whole lot more details than that. I do have another ebook that's called Satellites and Weapons of the Air Force Space Command, and in there I show the actual structure, an organization chart for the 50th Space Wing that includes all the squadrons and some of the satellite constellations that they operate. So you actually get an understanding of how the structure works. For example, there's the first, second, third, and fourth squadrons, and they only recently combined two of those squadrons. I believe the third squadron was combined into the fourth, and then there's also a fifth and sixth squadrons that act as reserve. And beneath that, these guys are the operational squadrons. They operate the weapons on the satellites, okay? I don't want to be unclear about it. These squadrons literally operate weapons. That's their job. And these weapons target people and objects on the ground. Beneath that structure are two squadrons. The 50th Squadron actually does what's called satellite maintenance. So their job every day is to provide the other squadrons with a list of all the satellites that are operational and which ones are down for maintenance. It could be a software upgrade, it could be a calibration, whatever. So their job is simply to tell which satellites are available for targeting. Then the next one is the 21st Squadron. Their job is called the Daily Task Orders. They take here's the list of all the people that get special treatment, and I put that in quotation marks, get special treatment today. And then they hand that information over to the first, second, third, and fourth squadrons, and they handle the manual attacks that will be done that day. Does that make sense? Now, a lot of it is automated. A lot of it is pre-programmed. We know the reason we know that is because there's only 1,300 personnel, but there's more than 1 million people worldwide. There's clearly no way that 1,300 personnel could manually target and hit and play with weapons on a daily basis with that many people. We also know that the CIA office in Denver has roughly 8,000 to 10,000 employees that are all responsible for domestic CIA operations. Only a segment of those can handle what's known as PSYOPs, or psychological operations. They're the ones that decide how to do your gang stalking, how to structure it so that they know what your weaknesses are. They know who your family members are that you depend on. They're the ones that put all the time and research into figuring out how to break you down. That's their job. But their numbers are in the thousands, not the millions. So clearly, much of what's being done has to be automated. The numbers just aren't there. They have to automate at least some of it. So maybe that was a segue off.
No,
but I did want to cover that because I think it's fairly important. People don't understand how the system works, so I'm trying to give you an outline of how that structure works. So that ebook is Satellites and Weapons of the Air Force Space Command. It gives you an organizational chart so you can understand which squadrons operate which satellites. There are three things that we know. I've been asked this question, so I want to cover it because I know it'll come up. How do we know that the Air Force Space Command is the ones behind this? It's a good question. Number one, there's a guy named Dr. Bill Deagle. He's a medical doctor that worked at Schriever Air Force Base back in the 1990s. He's got a little short 5-minute video that I've referenced on my website. I encourage you to watch that 5-minute video. It's very compelling. You would not believe some of the things that go on at Schriever Air Force Base. All of it top secret. What's called a Q clearance. It's above top secret. They are dealing, and I don't want to get into the bizarre subjects, but anything that has to do with satellite or space operations, they are dealing with it at Schriever Air Force Base. And he's basically a whistleblower. He was there. If you watch that video, he describes a discussion he had with a general back in 1995 approximately, where the general told him, listen, we control all of space between Earth and Mars. And Dr. Deagle said, no, wait a minute, you mean between the Earth and Moon? He said, no, between the Earth and Mars. We control all of that airspace. It's ours. We control it, which is a violation of the 1967 Outer Space Treaty. No one's allowed to control any celestial body or space. That's clearly a violation. So the first piece of evidence that we know that Schriever is involved is they control all of the, almost all, a very high percentage, like 99% of all the military satellites for any branch, Navy, Army, Air Force. If it's a satellite and it's military or involves military information, it's run out of Schriever, okay?
So
the second thing that we know is on the website for Air Force Space Command and Schriever Air Force Base, it says, and I got this quote on my website, it's basically a confession or an admission of guilt. It says that we are the sole provider of GPS and tracking information from satellites. That's very telling, because you can't hit somebody with a microwave beam unless you track them and you know where they are. Listen to the way they've worded it. We are the sole provider of GPS and tracking information for the entire military. That means they're involved. That means they're doing it. They're involved with the tracking. They have your GPS coordinates right now. It's held in a computer at Schriever Air Force Base. They have according to Dr. Bill Deagle, they have the most powerful supercomputer in the world at Schriever Air Force Base, and it has more computing power in that one computer than the entire rest of the world combined in computing power. In that one computer. That's the kind of investment they put into this. It's an unbelievable scale. So that's two pieces. The third piece we have is the admissions from the personnel that work at Schriever Air Force Base and Air Force Space Command. And we know from social media, you can find in that ebook I just mentioned, Satellites and Weapons of the Air Force Space Command, I've provided some of the social media account information for personnel, where, for example, they identify, I'm one of 1,300 operational personnel. I work with the squadrons, 1st, 2nd, 3rd, and 4th Squadron at Schriever Air Force Base. We operate 7 satellite constellations and 9 different weapon systems in space. So he's literally admitting that they operate weapon systems in space. So they are the largest operator of satellites and satellite systems of anywhere in the world. There's bar none. Nobody even comes close to what they're doing. So I encourage folks that want more details to go and pull down that ebook. It's free. And I also encourage you, don't take my word for it. I've given you the links. I've given you where to look. Go to look at the websites of Air Force Space Command and Schriever Air Force Base. Pull up the social media accounts of some of these Air Force personnel, and you can read it yourself. I strongly encourage people to do their own research. That's what makes you a believer. Don't take my word for it. Go do the research yourself. That's what I want people to do. So,
if I understood it correctly, these are the squadrons, and these are the people who are involved most certainly in directing these sort of assaults at Americans. Is that right?
That's correct. Yes.
So is it also the case that these people are involved in directing the attacks at all other people around the world, given that they're the sole providers of GPS information? Is that only sole provider within the US? How is that meant? What do you think?
We believe that the controlling the satellite systems can only be done from that one location and that supercomputer. But apparently they have a backup system in the Cheyenne Mountain complex where they can be moved in the event of a nuclear confrontation. So there's a system and a backup system in Cheyenne Mountain, which is literally an underground tunnel away from Schriever Air Force Base. We have not found any evidence that any other government or military has the capability to monitor and handle that much satellite traffic and that much information. The fourth piece that I didn't mention was that Air Force Space Command proudly displays, we track everything in orbit. This is important. Everything in orbit, approximately 1,400 satellites and more than 22,000 pieces of satellite debris. They track everything. They know who launched it, they know who's got it in orbit, and they know what frequencies it emits. So my question to General John Raymond is, if you want to pretend that you're not operating these weapons, you can tell us who is. Absolutely. Does that make sense?
Yes, and I think this is well, basically what you are describing here. These sort of assaults, we do know from the victims that they are being mutilated, and several people have already died. Several. as it's a gross underestimate. But what we have is a group of Americans who are running amok and certainly mutilating and killing other Americans, which automatically implies high treason. Now, if they also turn out to be the main control center controlling the assaults on, for example, us Europeans, right? There's no war declared. This is, it would be a war crime in any case, targeting civilians willy-nilly. But when there's no war declared, I mean, this is just out of, it just blows everything we've ever known out of the water. And if this turns out to be really true, and I think the evidence that you submit is certainly enough for court cases, these people have basically court cases for high treason and the most astounding global war crimes rolling towards them. And I think within the US, this type of high treason against all Americans by a very small group automatically implies the death penalty. So, we're talking very, very serious stuff here. And I think what's very interesting is you have tracked down these people and you've also tracked down their private address. Is that right?
Yes, where it was available, I have provided that in my ebook, Treason at the Air Force Space Command. I've identified 12 senior ranking officers at the Air Force Space Command only in operations. These, I did not include officers that were responsible for perimeter security, building security, facility maintenance, road construction, and there are high-ranking officers that deal with all that. Accounting and purchasing, there's officers involved in that. They have no need to know about the satellite weapons, and they probably don't know about it. So this list is confined to those in operations, and I call this list, it's the first list, I call it the Dirty Dozen. There's 12 of them. I have since expanded that list, and I published another book called More Officers at the Air Force Space Command, where I found actual historical records to show prior generals, colonels, lieutenant colonels, captains that were involved in these squadrons who have since either retired or moved on to other functions. But they are equally culpable, even though they may have been involved with building that base up 15 years ago. Certainly that capability existed then and was growing and expanding, so they are culpable. So there's a second book where I list more officers at the Air Force Space Command.
Well,
and I highly recommend that.
I would actually recommend to all the victims, wherever you are in the world, to download it right now, as long as the information is available. And also remember that in the case of crimes against humanity, there is no limitation period. So it means that even though these people retired, they will be liable for crimes they committed going all the way back to 50, 60 years ago. And there's absolutely no getting out. So this is bombshell information. I mean, absolutely mind-blowing. And I want you all to understand that what Richard is telling us here is that we have the people identified. These people will be some of your respondents, maybe the main defendants in your court cases, wherever you are in the world. You can name these people, by name, their address, and most importantly, already now, before you have filed a court case, you can already send your notice of liability to these people. Right. And with the notice of liability, you basically notify them that henceforth you have identified them. You might not be able to stop them from doing what they're doing, but from that day onwards and, stretching back, they are liable. They are liable to all the damage that they do to you and your family, which includes cancer, many other degenerative diseases, and, especially to your children, genetic damage to your children. So we are really talking about damages here in the billions. And this can be laid right at the door of these few people. So, that's very interesting. The other question I had is maybe you don't have information on this, but from a military point of view, I would expect that you would have more redundancy than just one Air Force base and then one backup, because this is such a global system. Am I right in assuming that there would be at least another European center that's coordinating things over here? Or is that
that's certainly possible. I don't have that level of detail, Catherine, but I would welcome, I'm sure the TI community would welcome anybody that could research and track that down and find satellite operational stations that could handle hundreds of satellites. And it's important to appreciate the scope and the scale that's required to do that. You've got to have massive security because it's all top secret. You've got to have building security. You've got to have multiple levels of management and authorization. It's not something you're going to find at a little base where 50 cars are parked outside. That's they're not going to be able to handle what's involved. The logistics alone would overwhelm them. So it's not simple, and it's not going to be something that can be easily transferred. So it should make it easy to find, if that helps. Yeah.
Well, you know, I mean, but if you're looking at big military complexes and big military bunker systems, there you can find them all across Europe, but Norway is one place which is fairly hidden. So there it shows up if you've basically got thousands and thousands of people out in the middle of nowhere. However, Switzerland, it doesn't show up, and we do have thousands of people here working in military bunkers. We have them in every village, and a couple of years ago, some of the military plans were declassified here, and it showed that every valley in Switzerland is connected to another valley or to other valleys with the tunnel systems, and the tunnel systems here and the military bunker systems here in Switzerland are truly astounding. So if I had to venture an educated guess, I would say that the second HQ, control for satellite systems, is here in Switzerland. So Brussels is the NATO HQ. However, this, I think, is the command and control HQ, and several bits of forensic evidence point to that. But the traditional headquarters of this global organized crime cartel that we're actually talking about has traditionally had its headquarters here in Switzerland. So I would bet my guts. And also here in Switzerland, they do have astoundingly big, systems, monitoring space that somehow is not really the type of systems you would expect for a country that only has 8 million, inhabitants. So some really big stuff is going down here in Switzerland. And also, just circumstantial evidence, I encourage people to fly to Zurich Airport and just have a look at the size of the car parks, guys, because Zurich, I think, has 380,000 or 360,000 inhabitants, but the airport's car park is as large as for a city of, several million people. This means that a lot of people are arriving in Zurich and they're not showing up above ground. The question is, where the hell are they going? So, there's a simple things that one can do. But this is hugely interesting because already, from what I understand, already now we can take this information and go straight to court with it for an initial filing for emergency injunctions. And then it's actually, I always argue, it's not the task of civilians to do this type of military research. But if we can file with this information as a precedent here in Europe, that already gets us far, So this is absolutely astounding. One of the things I wanted to go back to, because we have really covered a lot of mileage, I wanted to go back and let me share my screen, because there are a couple of things I wanted to ask you about. So already the first bombshell revelation is this plot. And one of the things that I know from a microwave and military expert in Belgium is that agents and pilots have traditionally been implanted at the back of the head, although he didn't say where on the back of the head, and I think this point still counts as the back of the head, and also in the neck just above the hairline. So these 2 points have been the traditional point of implanting agents. And also, I think here at the back of our heads, the skull is thicker, and I think the thickest point is roughly here. So any sort of radio chips, the emissions would be attenuated, so you wouldn't be frying the brain quite to the same extent as if it was somewhere else on the skull. Now, this is my question now is the following. If the satellites seem to be hitting the back of the head, am I right in assuming that this is where they're interfacing with the RFID chips that we found in people? Are these satellites actually pulsing a chip? Because my question is, if a satellite sends a beam down to my head, okay, the satellite might have that sort of power, but where's the information that's being sent back? Are they just monitoring us continuously? Do they lose track of us if we go into a tunnel and have to map us again? Or are they in fact pulsing the chips that we have on the backs of our heads, and then the chips send a signal to nearby amplifiers, and it's actually an integrated system that we're dealing with? That would be my question. What you say?
That's a very good question. I'm not sure that I have a definitive answer, Catherine. we can certainly detect the signal. We can detect the signal that's being put out by any chips. How it's being retrieved is something that's more difficult to determine. It may be all of the above. It may be they're using different methods for different people and trying different technologies. At this point, we know the tracking frequency for the satellites is 3600 to 3750 megahertz.
Say it again. How many megahertz is it?
It's 3600 megahertz to 3750 megahertz. That range is the tracking signal from the satellites. And the signal that's used for the vercators is a very narrow range between 3920 and 3935. And the only reason it's not one signal for all the vercators is because you get a slightly different frequency due to the size of the resonant chamber in the vercator. So each one will have a unique frequency. In fact, that can identify, each vercator will put out a very unique frequency, and you can use that. If we map these out, you can eventually we'll be able to tell exactly which satellite and which vercator is being used on different people, because they are unique. Each one of them has a unique frequency signature.
Okay, let me spell that out for our viewers and for myself, because I think what you have just revealed is really, again, another piece of astounding evidence. So when you are saying that, if I understood you correctly, the tracking signal, you said were 3600 megahertz, that is 3.6 gigahertz, right?
That's correct.
Saying that we are being tracked between 3.6 and 3.75 gigahertz. Now, I do have an electromagnetic measuring device that measures up to 8 gigahertz. So am I right in assuming that with this, I should be able to measure the signal?
You can. It's also fairly easy for them to hack those devices, and I've experienced that. In fact, a number of engineers here that are TIs have experienced that. And the processor chip in any of one of these handheld devices emits a radio frequency that's very easy to tap into and alter the programming on the device. So unfortunately, to use those devices effectively, you've got to back up the software and the firmware on the device and plan on swapping it out or resetting it on each time you use it. Unfortunately, it's simply too easy for them to hack. There's no protection, there's no password on that code. It's open code that they can hack and alter.
And I understood you correctly that the hacking is done by just sending electromagnetic waves to this thing and interfacing with the chip. Is that right?
The processor chip on those handheld devices, yes, the processor itself puts out a radio frequency that's very easy to hack.
Okay.
And the NSA is particularly good at hacking these devices.
Okay, you know
one of their specialties.
You know what? On one hand, this is bad news. On the other hand, as regards court cases, this is brilliant news. And I'm so pleased that they can hack it, because basically what I'm looking for is all the different threads of evidence that point at wrongdoing or malicious manipulation. So basically the way I could check right now if my device is hacked, because I was about to show you, I've just moved to a location with essentially zero signal. I can't measure it with this device anymore. Anybody buying this device in a city, you would at least see it at 0.3 volts per meter. My background is now less than 0.1 volts per meter. This is incredible. So I'm now really out in the back of beyond here in Switzerland, okay? And I cannot measure anything with this, but I can feel the pulses. So this is now very interesting because I have this device, the EM Fields Acousticom 2. I also have the Aronia device, the blue device that you have. And we already talked before the show and you confirmed that you had evidence that they had hacked your Aronia device. Now, what we also discussed is that if this hacking happens, we can just, if we know what frequency band they are trying to block out, we can buy a frequency generator and do a simple test of generating a signal in that band ourselves and then measuring it. And if we don't measure anything, All we have to do is use the signal generator, prove that we cannot measure anything, and this is already evidence of malicious interference with our devices, right?
I would agree with that, yes. That's a very simple and effective way to determine if it's been hacked. It appears what they're doing is they go into the device and zero out the range between about 3 gigahertz and 4 gigahertz. They thought they were hiding the satellites and the satellite tracking by doing that. The cell towers is a different story because you can't zero that out because you know there's a cell tower sitting there, you can see it. So zeroing out that is far less effective. And it's far easy to uncover. But with the satellites, until I was able to find that, and by the way, in my ebook called Targeted Individuals Technical Information, which is free at my website, lighthouse.com, I've got actual photographs of the signal measurements that show the tracking signal and the harm signal at the same time. And you can see the different measurements. I've taken them on different days, different locations, and I've got the actual picture of the measurements on the Aronia device. I'm not suggesting anybody go out and purchase one of those unless you've just got a lot of extra money. They can be rented. There are a number of electronic rental places around the United States. So if you're technically inclined and you want to do that, that's great. But I'd hate to see somebody spend a lot of money and then have the instrument become non-usable for them.
Well,
is that caution?
What I could also say is that what I've experienced myself is that they came in and they replaced my device stupidly because I've got so many measuring devices, I can't lug them with me all the time. So they do break in and they actually replace the device by an identical looking one. So that's what they did with me because it suddenly showed up with scratches, you know. I do have a very good memory, and suddenly when I came back, it had extra scratches it didn't have before. And was lying on the table. So, you know, I knew that it was a different device. So that happens. But whatever they do, that's what I'm trying to teach people. It doesn't matter what sort of bullshit they pull on us. The only thing we have to prove in court is that some sort of dodgy stuff has happened to many, many unconnected people. And I think what you and I should do, Richard, if you have the time in future, is we should run these experiments. You have an Aronia device, I have one. And now that you mention it, I do distinctly remember that my device showed absolutely nothing. And I thought it was suspicious that it showed no background, nothing, no noise between 3 and 4 gigahertz. I do remember that because I stepped through all the frequency bands. Now, what I'm going to do next week is I'm going to pop out and buy a signal generator. And what I can say to targets is, please do not spend the money on your own, but you should all group together. And I think if 5 or 10 targets, you know, either collect money together or you start crowdfunding together, I do want us all to have these sort of staple measuring devices, not just in the hands of a few people, but scattered around all the European countries and all the major cities, so that we can check up on these people, you know, and we start generating large volumes of information. And this is absolutely brilliant, I have to say. So, you know.
So I will say that here in the United States, I haven't noticed for the international table, but the FCC has a frequency allocation table for the U.S. And it just so turns out that signal band, most of that signal band that I just mentioned, 3.6 to 3.75, actually the FCC has allocated it to satellite to ground signals. So the FCC is, if you look it up, you will see that is solely reserved for satellite to ground signals. And it's a very quiet region. It was very easy to pick up on the device that I had because there were no other signals. It wasn't just the loudest signal, it was the only signal in that range.
So in other words, this is a very, very good point, actually, because also there's another institution that seems to be involved, or at least can be held responsible, because the frequency licensing authorities in the European countries also have their hand in covering up the body signals, you know, the body chip signals. And there's some interesting stories I can say about that. But it also means that if you are measuring any sort of signal in that band, it means that you are being pulsed by satellite, right?
I would think so, yes. And I certainly can't, speak to all of the technologies that are being used, but it's clear that the primary method for tracking, because it's so precise, these satellites. Here's the reason these satellites are so precise and why they have to use them. They can't just simply use other means. The way these satellites precisely track what you're doing is the GPS coordinates involve a north and south location, latitude and longitude, and an elevation. And the way they do that elevation is with very accurate atomic clocks. It literally times the pulse from the time it leaves the satellite to the top of your head and bounces back, and it times that, and it can measure the exact height of the top back part of your head within about half of a centimeter.
Now, wait, Richard, hang on. Just as a physicist, I've just, already a big question mark arose. You just said they are tracking the signal and they're measuring the signal as it bounces back. Is that actually what's happening?
Yes, the reflected signal gives them the altitude, the exact altitude of the top of your head. That's how they know it. They've got a very precise atomic clocks in those satellites, and when the tracking pulse is sent, it literally times it, and the other reason it's so precise is they use local benchmarks. For example, if you're walking around New York City, they're going to bounce a benchmark signal off the flagpole on the Rockefeller Center, for example, and they know the precise GPS height and coordinates of that. So that when they start bouncing it off anybody on the ground, they know within less than 1 centimeter. About most TIs will tell you within half a centimeter, which is less than a quarter of an inch. It's very, very accurate, and that's the way they do it. But if you try to do that from cell towers, you've got to put those atomic clocks in all the cell towers. They're not doing that. The satellites are the ones that have the precision tracking, and then the coordinates are relayed through the supercomputer at Schriever Air Force Base to the cell tower at the speed of light, and all the cell towers around you have your precise GPS coordinates every step you take. Now, so they can always point at the center of your head.
Yeah, okay, gosh, my goodness. So I'm I am already very familiar with advanced technology at CERN, and there were some wow technologies that we had. Nevertheless, this still wows me because you are telling me that they are sending a pulse to my head from outer space, and their measuring devices are so sensitive because what I'm thinking is the back of I don't know how big the signal is, okay, especially when it comes from outer space. So let's say I'm sending a laser pulse, a very, collimated laser pulse from space. It bounces off my head. Nevertheless, do you not have some sort of loss in intensity? And then especially when it scatters off an oddly shaped surface. And then you're telling me that this laser beam bounces back to the satellite. Okay, fair enough, speed of light, I do understand that, but it is freaking outer space and they are very long distance away. And you're telling me that with millions of people around, they can tell all these signals apart? Really?
Yes. The first time that I got a group of TIs in a circle, I think there was probably 7 or 8 of us, and I was trying to tell everybody, this was probably just a few months ago, and I was trying to tell everybody about the back of the head and just check it with your hand. And we all stood there, and I go, watch this now. Hold your hand there, and I want everybody to count out right when you feel the pulse. Guess what we found out? Everybody had the exact same synchronized timing. We were standing there going 1, 2, 3, 4, all at the same time.
So I completely understand the bit about satellites being able to pulse us. I have no problem. And the reason why I don't have a problem is because, the crop circles, everyone said, oh, it's aliens. And I always said, no, it's satellite calibration patterns because they're mostly circular and yada, yada, yada. So some detail, so I thought, okay, right, what this shows us that they do have some sort of space-based laser capabilities to really cut through individual, bits of wheat. Fair enough. Very precisely. So I have no problem. I have seen evidence for that. But now my question is really about the bounce back. I mean, you do have odd shapes, and then you're telling me that this signal, I mean, good God, I mean, how? I still
They've had this technology for more than 30 years. In fact, if you look up weather satellites, there's a number of NASA satellites that measure snow depth within less than 1 centimeter anywhere in the world. They can also measure the wave height of the ocean, the water height of the ocean at precise coordinates all throughout the year. Within 1 centimeter, they can measure snow depth anywhere in the world all throughout the year. The depth of a glacier can be accurately measured within 1 centimeter any time of year, and they can always bounce it off the exact same point. They've been doing this for a long time. This is not new technology.
Okay, I'm seriously wowed here, people. Okay, I didn't know that. I didn't know that, and I just think this is just the most mind-blowing piece of information. So is this done with an entire cluster, an entire web of satellites? So you're telling me that one I mean, you know, because what I don't understand basically is this: you have a satellite and then a beam, okay, and then your measuring device is a certain type of aperture, if you like, you know, that where you can take data in. So you're telling me that these sensors are so sensitive that you can bounce something that you shot down to Earth, and this particular laser beam is then bounced back, and you can still measure it, and the losses are, you know, don't matter, and you can just map out the entire surface of the Earth. It's just incredible.
Well, that's a good question, and most people would think, well, you know, if I try to listen to a frequency in the radio frequency band, like between radio stations, there's a lot of static and noise. If you get out one of your signal analyzers and tune it into 3650 megahertz, right in the middle of that range I was describing, what you find is the background noise level is very, very low. There's no signals there. There's nothing there. So when you hit a pulse anywhere in the world, even if it's reflected 22,000 miles away, the little blip you get back, you know who sent it, because it's the only thing there. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does make sense. I still have to, you know, I have to sleep over it, and I have to think about it for a very long time. I mean, I'm a physicist, but I still have to think about it for a very long time to convince myself that that's possible. And this is why I was really reluctant to publicly talk about satellites and say they are involved, because I really had to move out into the, you know, the backs of beyond. To be fair, I also had to get away from my neighbors who were shooting me horizontally, and I've got evidence for that. But now I can confirm that something must be coming from above, no doubt about it. But I'm just so wowed by this technology. And you're telling me this is ancient. So roughly when do you think did they have this capability?
Well, we know the satellites were launched. The first targeted individual that we know publicly claimed, is a guy named Harlan Gerard, and he lives in Philadelphia. And I want to say he's about 77 or 80 years old now. And I've actually tried to contact him, but I've never gotten a response. But he publicly went for many years interviewing with radio stations and newspapers. And it wasn't so long. I want to say maybe 10 years ago, the New York Times even did an article on him. And they said the guy they started the article saying, you know, he really doesn't seem crazy. He seems like a very normal guy. But in 1987, late in 1987, he said he first knew he was being hit with satellite weapons. And if you look on the timeline that I presented on targetedjustice.com, you'll find under the technology tabs, there's one called timeline. And I give the entire timeline from the first patent of the Vercator all the way to the first launches, to when Schriever Air Force Base was built, and when they transferred the satellite control command from Lockheed down to Schriever Air Force Base. And then in 1987, when they started launching these satellites, and when Harlan Gerard first reported it, and then in 1992, when they had the full system operational, they went out and made a public statement that, oh, we've canceled the Strategic Defense Initiative, the Star Wars program, we canceled it. That's how you know it was fully operational. And so I presented that timeline, and it's got the patents, it's got the people, some of the people that were involved, and their home address. And for those people where they live and live close by, go knock on the front door and talk to them about it.
Exactly.
So
I would say also, people, do not go and assault these people. Okay, please do not, because there are many more people involved, and we want to have the whole lot. But you most certainly are welcome, and I think you should send them your notice of liability. Okay, and remind them that crimes against humanity do not have a limitation period, because frankly, if you get 50 letters like that, with, you know, facing up to the financial damages that you have to pay out for, that should scare most sane people. And the insane people, which we also know take part, well, you know, nothing will scare them. So still send it to them. I absolutely think, you know, it should be done the formal way. Gosh, I have to say, you know, first of all, I want to thank you, right? I've got many, many more questions, so don't run away, but I want to thank you already at this point, because the information that you present will is such a, you know, phenomenal leap forward, you know, for all of us, for the people in the US, certainly for us in Europe, but people around the world. I mean, this is just, you know, absolutely astounding. But one thing I wanted to emphasize again is you said that the Space Command was transferred from Lockheed Martin to Schriever AFB. In what year did that happen again?
I've got that on my timeline, and I don't recall that off the top of my head. It was around 1990, approximately. But that exact date is on my timeline, and you can pull that up on targetedjustice.com.
Okay.
And yeah, so initially from the 1960s until roughly 1990, the Military Satellite Control Network Center, the center command point for satellites, was at a private company, Lockheed Martin, in Sunnyvale, California. And it wasn't until after Schriever Air Force Base opened and became operational that they transferred control of that satellite control network to Schriever Air Force Base. And again, that's where 99% of all the military satellites are operated from that base.
Okay. So the other thing, the other puzzle piece I want to add to this is that if it was transferred from Lockheed, my former colleague Karen Melton Stewart hired a private investigator, and he found out, and you can actually, this is the reference for that statement is here in this interview with her. This was on the Techno Crime Fighters Forum, and it's called the ex-NSA employee whistleblower exposes Lockheed Martin. And this is the bombshell. You can probably find it under searching for bombshell and Lockheed on YouTube. This is a 6-minute clip, and she explains in this. This is my former colleague Karen, and she said, or the private investigator found out that Lockheed Martin is running, I should say, running the gang stalking in 47 out of 50 states. Now, you said that a lot of automatization is involved in tracking all these people. So I would, if Lockheed had the Space Command before, and they have now been, you know, they are now being set up to run the gang stalking in 47 of 50 states, I would just bet that they are still involved in this, and the systems that they used to own, they still have access to, and it's probably through this space-based tracking that they can coordinate the gang stalking. Am I right in assuming that?
Well, I haven't uncovered any information suggesting that Lockheed is directly involved in the gang stalking, although I can't say that I've researched that a great deal. I focused more of my research on the technology and the companies that build the technology and how it works. The gang stalking has not been a significant portion of my research. I will say that we did have a very credible whistleblower that is a former police officer, and I'm not going to give his name or his location, but he became a whistleblower when he was targeted and traveled all around the United States and confirmed that the fusion centers, what we call fusion centers here in the United States, there's at least one fusion center in every state. And he confirmed that this is where the gang stalking orders, the main orders, come down from. For example, whenever a new person is added to the list, they're the first ones to know, and they're the ones that assign it to a local InfraGard, Citizen Corps, Neighborhood Watch. There's a number of groups involved that are outside of the reach of FOIA requests, Freedom of Information requests, and that's why they do that. The fusion centers themselves are actually private entities, so they are technically exempt from FOIA requests, but the employees that work there are not. So, for example, the city of Houston might have several police officers that work at a fusion center. And if you send a FOIA request to the fusion center, they're going to say, we're not subject to these, but you can send it to the police department in the city of Houston, say, we want to know the records that were obtained by the city employee. And I've recommended that strategy to a number of people. The emergency operations centers are another level down from the fusion center, the structure that, and again, this is just the United States. I can't speak for other areas, but this, I would think that this general structural arrangement was applicable in other places. And I'm not discounting the fact that private companies may be involved. I don't have any evidence of that as yet. We do know that we've identified a number of FBI and DHS, Department of Homeland Security employees that work at these fusion centers, and their job title is intelligence officer or intelligence supervisor. That strongly suggests that they are involved with hiding something. Okay, so those employees exist both at the fusion center and the emergency operations center. Every city has a 911 call center, and it's very clear that there are intelligence officers at those 911 call centers to either reroute, block, or hide 911 calls from TIs. This is very important that TIs understand how this system works. The people that help cover up your gang stalking work at the 911 call centers and at the fusion center. And you can pull up the Department of Homeland Security and find the location for any fusion center in any state. In Texas, they've got several of them, but in smaller states like Rhode Island, they only have one. So I really encourage everyone to get that information off the internet before it gets removed. Okay, they're not going to, now that they know that we're onto it, they're not going to leave it up there. Your 911 call center will even have a list of employees, their names and titles, and you can use that information and then go to zabasearch.com or Veripages, V-E-R-I, Veripages.com, and you can find their home address. Okay, for people that own property, it's very easy to find where they live. Okay, particularly if they've got an unusual name. That makes it very easy to find. So it's possible to go and knock on their door and say, hey, I understand you work in the 911 call center. I'd like to know what you guys are doing with this gang stalking stuff. Just have a very polite conversation, no threats, no violence. We are not advocating violence of any form, but it's nice to know where people live, and that probably makes it uncomfortable for them.
What I would really heartily recommend, as you say, is that people get this information right now. I wanted to show one plot that you have sent me, Richard, which I think is extremely important. And this is this one here. This is, I think, what you have outlined in bits. There's some things, for example, the emergency response unit that's missing here, but this is what you call the targeted individual diagram, and it can be found on your website under the targeted individual section. And what you have explained is that the fusion center, that's this bit of the diagram, is coordinating the gang stalking. So this is the psychological terrorism, but by the way, the gang stalking also includes the housebreaking. Okay, which happens in every single country. Then you mentioned the US Air Force Space Command, the Treva AFB. They coordinate the shots to the head. They also interface with the cell towers and the microwave towers. And then you say that they are also involved in the blocking of the legal help and block of the medical help. Is that right?
Yes, that's correct. That's what we've posted, that there is an organized structure to this and kind of a command and control system. So if a TI makes an emergency call saying, hey, I can't breathe, and I know what it is, and I need you to send an ambulance. What most TI, I've heard this from many TIs, the first thing they do is you show up as a name on the terror watch list, and so the first thing you do is send 2 sheriffs or 2 deputies to your house before they'll even let an ambulance on the property. That tells you your name's on the terror watch list, because the deputies show up and they go, we were told to check for possible terror suspects. And of course, the person that made the 911 call is just flabbergasted, like, no, I can't breathe. I didn't say I was a terrorist.
Yeah.
So
exactly.
it makes it very clear that the information they're using to dispatch these sheriffs came from the terror watch list. Otherwise, why would they think there was a terror suspect on the property?
Yeah, and I should
So
say
it,
that, yeah, one of the things I would like to say for those people who are new to this, because every week I've got new viewers, I would like to emphasize that the people who are on the terror watch list are, for example, single mothers with autistic children, because autistic children are perfect for experimentation because they cannot express themselves. Okay, so I've got a lot of moms with autistic children on this list. So autistic children and single moms are not your staple terrorist. I also have a lot of retired elderly women because they're vulnerable, you know, and it's these type of people, single women who live on their own because they're vulnerable. And I think the Nazi symbol that you put here on the FBI is entirely justified and entirely fitting, because this is Nazi experimentation. I want everybody to understand. The equivalent of the fusion centers in the 1930s and 1940s, right, was the, I think it was the SS, right? It was, I think the Stasi, I think it's Staatssicherheit, that's the state security. This was the Nazi SS. And everything
yeah.
that's here is one-to-one identical to the organization of the Nazi SS in Nazi Germany. Now, it's also identical, not by coincidence, to the organization of the Stasi, which also organized gang stalking, but also the FBI ran COINTELPRO, which is a virtually identical system here. The only thing that's new is these add-ons, the microwave towers. Now, the other thing I want to say is the following. I know that from whistleblowers, now that we have this diagram on, the blocking of legal help we all know, the blocking of medical help we know. One of the things I want to say now that we're here is that there are certain victims who found out that when you are going through airport scanners and you are loaded with chips, which by the way also interface with these cell towers, then there's a parallel list and you are named a patient, all right, a patient. And when you're going through these scanners, the scanners dynamically mask your body implants, because otherwise you would show up like a Christmas tree, okay, head to toe. And so that this doesn't happen, you are called a patient. So the scanner says, oh, you're a known patient, so let's not set off this device, okay? This is how it's happening. So you are marked a research subject in all of these interconnected systems. And the fact that on this diagram, it shows that you can, you know, it's the blocking of medical help is interfaced with this entire system is very telling, is again, a crime against humanity. You know, I mean, this is just absolutely astounding, I have to say. So now, with your interview, you're the last missing piece, Richard, your research here, because now we can put all these things together and we can literally take all this and go to court straight for the emergency injunctions, naming these people as defendants in the first line, pending further investigations. You know, I mean, this is just absolutely mind-blowing, because I want everybody to understand that the pulses we are all getting to our heads, and by the way, also your children and also your newborns are being pulsed. These pulses are leading to neurodegeneration, right? And I would say also to the neurodegenerative diseases, we presumably also the ones we call Alzheimer's and other brain diseases and brain cancers. Am I right in assuming that?
There are a number of technical medical publications that show, for example, some of the Cuban diplomats had MRIs that showed white matter deterioration. And what that is, if you look at a diagram of a brain, it's just inside the gray matter is on the outside, the white matter is just inside of that, and that there is a measurable deterioration that can be detected with an MRI. And that's clearly brain damage. We also know that calcium depletion is one of the effects of the microwave. So I would encourage folks to take calcium supplements. They won't take effect right away. It seems to take several days to build up, and then it has momentum in that even if you stop taking it for a day, you will notice improvement, and it seems to help with the short-term memory loss and the ability to concentrate. So I recommend calcium supplements. The person that did that research is Dr. Ross Adey, A-D-E-Y. He's a medical doctor for the CIA, and discovered that the calcium depletion is what causes some of these mental function problems.
The other thing, very interesting, you would mention calcium depletion, because from the victims and also my former colleague, Dr. Millicent Black, she has been assaulted, and the person who is assaulting her is actually an Air Force veteran, and he, through the V2K intercom system that was implanted in her ears, he communicated that he has been given access to a satellite, he himself. And I think if I remember correctly, AFB Shriver was involved in his CVs at some point. So anyway, he is assaulting her at high intensity, and it led basically to, she had to have a large part of her upper thigh bone amputated and replaced. And when the doctors operated on her, when they cut off the section of bone, they said that to her, literally, the words were, your bones have turned mushy. So I wonder, because I suspect that high density organic matter, for example, bone, would absorb a larger fraction of the energy being pulsed. Am I right in assuming that the continuous pulsing, maybe at increased levels for the targets, would lead to bone degeneration? Could that be the case? And therefore, the calcium depletion goes hand in hand with that, perhaps?
I don't want to get too far out of engineering bounds. I don't pretend to have any medical expertise, but from an engineering standpoint, yes, we all know that calcium is a fundamental part of the makeup of our bones, and I will refer those viewers that are interested. There are a number of very good medical journal articles on microwaves and calcium, the effects on the biological effects on the body. And it's actually strongly related to what's called ECT, or electroshock treatments. And you'll find there's a number of parallels between long-term microwave effects and the short-term ECT electroshock treatments. There are many correlations. It apparently has very similar biological effects. So the effects on the body and the brain are disturbing, actually.
I think, this is, we should probably put some markers together where people can go and get MRIs and get certain markers checked. Because what I really want to encourage people is to realize that all of us, even those who don't think they are targets, we are all being pulsed by these criminals, by this criminal network, and our bodies are degenerating as we speak. And I think the youngest person to be diagnosed with Alzheimer's was an 8-year-old child. So, really this and another neurological degenerative diseases, I suspect strongly to be actually cover diseases for the degenerative effect of this pulsing. So what I'm saying is, everybody who's listening, please get the information that Richard pointed to, get it now, as long as it's available, right? Find out who is your fusion center, the head of the fusion center, who is the intelligence officer, you said, at the emergency call centers, right? Is that the information that people should get right now today?
Yes, I encourage everyone, no matter what city or town you live in, your 911 call goes somewhere, okay? Try to identify. If you're in a big city, it's very easy to identify. If you're living in Kansas City, you can look up that information and find out where their emergency operations center. And if you look it up on the web, they've probably got a list of personnel. That's really good information for you. You want to copy that or download it or make a copy of it and try to talk to some of these people. You may not be able to talk to them while they're at work, but if you can figure out where they live, they might live in your own neighborhood. You can go knock on their door and talk to them. Now, if you get the door slammed in your face, my suggestion would be to go to all their neighbors and tell them what kind of work they really do.
Absolutely.
It's perfectly legal. You do not threaten anybody. Do not commit an act of violence. We are simply asking questions and providing information.
And I guess
it is our opinion. We are expressing our opinions, which is a freedom of speech, constitutionally protected speech.
Yes, and I would also say what I would recommend for everybody who does that, please record the conversation for your own protection, that you can prove that you've not threatened these people. You know, I think
Good
it's
idea.
from a psychological point of view, it is really powerful to send letters already. If people start receiving, you know, every week 50 to 100 letters, that is already a psychological pressure that most people will probably not withstand for longer than 2 weeks. But you know, if you keep addressing these people, I think social pressures needs to be brought in, because these people are murdering us. They are literally degenerating us and then killing us. You know. So it is highly serious. And one of the things I want to say is people do download this information now from Richard's website, that get the information from your fusion centers, the 911 calls. I would also recommend that you do make a 911 call to prove that you have complained about this, record it so that you can use it in evidence, right? But document absolutely everything and start putting it into your court bundle. Start preparing your court bundle, because I want us all to start filing emergency injunctions. And Richard and I, just before the show, we discussed that. So especially technical people will want to do even more research, more and more and more. But the truth is that our bodies are being degenerated right now, and it's a cumulative effect. So what I really recommend is that all of us, we take the information we have today and we think about what's the minimum we need to file for an emergency injunction. In the UK, you have two types of court cases. You've got the full Monty of claiming for compensation, and you've got the emergency injunction, which could be, for example, your husband said to you, or your wife for that matter, I'm going to kill you. So the emergency injunction, the idea behind that is that you should be able to go to a court that day and see a judge within half an hour or an hour and say there's a reasonable, credible evidence and a reasonable suspicion that this is going to happen. This is going to damage my health. It is going to damage my life. I want a court to say, no, this is not okay. Whoever is doing it, there's an emergency injunction against them. Injunctive relief means the court says whatever the hell it is that they are doing that's harming you, they have to stop now. And then if they continue doing it, then the court can deal with them. And I think this is what we have to get into first, because we victims, we can only take the research so far. We cannot be expected to do 60 years of classified research. And if we don't manage to do it in time, we just have to die. That's not how society functions. So, Richard, I'm so grateful that you identified the people, and also that you made all your research available for free. You know, I really thank you deeply for that. And I'm aware of the time, and I'm aware of how much, you know, this has already been taxing your energy and your time today. What I really would like to ask you, are you willing to come on the show again and maybe teach us some of the things that you have been talking about, like making measurements and so on? Would you be free for further interviews in the future?
Sure. I'd welcome that opportunity. Yeah.
Because thank you very much. Because if you don't have anything further to add today, maybe we wrap up now and we come back at another time when people had the opportunity to maybe look at the documentation. And I encourage you all to start sending us questions that we can go through maybe next time. And hopefully next time we can also take our measuring devices and show the people, because there are many people listening right now. A lot of them would also be technical people or people who already have purchased these measuring devices. And I really would like to show you what to look for. So, Richard, is there anything you would like to say to wrap up today?
Yes, I would just like to send some words of encouragement that don't lose faith. We are going to figure this out. We will solve this. In the history of any military history, going back thousands of years, every weapon that has ever been invented has been defeated. Every single one. There has never been a weapon invented that wasn't defeated eventually. Please remember that. We will defeat this, okay?
Absolutely. Thank you very much. And I also would like to say, if this is how it is and we know where these people live, you know, they go into work every day and then eventually they have to come home. So we can arrest them. You know, we can drag them into court. And even if these satellites would be operating, you know, solo, totally driven by AI, satellites can be shot down. And, you know, the one disadvantage about satellites is that it's extremely hard to do repair work on them. So we can take these things down, and maybe now's the time to start identifying which satellites need to be shot down if these people cannot be made to stop what they are doing. But thank you very much, Richard. I have to say this is absolutely mind-blowing information that will lead to convictions, and it will lead to court cases in the coming weeks and months. So I'm very, very grateful, and I have to say I'm just deeply impressed. I have seen, you know, a lot of researchers in my life, but I think the research you have done is probably going to save my life and thousands of people's lives in the coming months, you know. So thank you from the depths of my heart for the research you have done. I think you are an absolutely outstanding individual, I have to say. And the fact that you've made it available for free is just, you know, it's saving lives. Thank you, Richard. Thank you.
Thank you for your time, Catherine.
So people, stay tuned. Please, you know, subscribe to the channel so that you can follow the next interview, and also go to Richard's website. I will show it before we close one more time. Let me share my screen and let me show you his website. And please download the documents right now and learn how to what to look for. So the URL is ourlighthouse.com. I've also put it already in the description below the YouTube video. So this is the website, how it looks when it meets you. And then please go to the store. Please read all the categories, but also go to the store and download the books that are here, which you can download for free. The most important section is CIA, NSA, FBI, and Deep State. And the documents or the books we've mentioned today were, first of all, the one we mentioned first is this one here, which is the Treason at the Air Force Space Command. And just remind me, Richard, because you mentioned the second book that I was trying to find here.
It's down at the bottom. It's lower down, a couple down
here.
there. That one, yes. It's called Satellites and Weapons of the Air Force Space Command.
Hang on, which one is that? Just so that I bring it up. Satellites and Weapons. I think is it. This is the one you mentioned later. This is the more officers at the Air Force Space Command.
Yes. That lists other historical officers that have worked at the highest levels at Schriever Air Force Base. Excellent.
So those are the people that also will be liable. And then the one, is it this one here, the microwave satellites and targeted individuals?
That's a good one, but the one that we were mentioning is further down. It's
oh, sorry, even one further down. Okay, sorry. Is it here?
No. It's sideways. You were going the right way. It's sideways.
Forgive me.
Yeah, there you go. It's the one that's got the satellite on the cover.
Oh, this one here. This one?
No.
Forgive me. Sorry, I want to.
No, it's okay. It's further to the right. Yeah, just keep scrolling to the right further. It'll go.
This is a microwave tower.
That's the cell tower one. Yeah, and there it is. There it is. That's it. Satellites and Weapons of the Air Force Space Command. There's an organization chart that tells how the squadrons are organized and which satellites they operate and how the command functions. What it makes it clear is that it's a very complex operation, involves thousands of people supporting it. It's not one rogue guy or a few rogue guys. There's lots of officers involved every day with authorization, authentication, and command and control.
Excellent. I mean, this is mind-blowing, and all these people are already there. So please spread the message to all the other victims who you know. So these are the covers. I wanted you all to see the images so that you can download this information quickly and get working on it, because I know that victims are most of the time, you know, very tortured and overwhelmed. So I want you to start with this information, and please download it with the image in mind that maybe in 2 weeks' time or a month's time, you are in court and filing an emergency injunction against these people. Certainly if you're in the US, but also if you are in Europe, you know, we need to start getting these people into court and start making them stop what they're doing, because it is our health. And also remember the children, because the intensity hits them even harder. Their bodies are penetrated even easier, and the damage is damaging them for life. You know, so thank you, Richard. I hope everybody please do the do your homework for next time, start reading this, start compiling your court cases, and please send us all your questions so that we can answer them, you know, hopefully next time. So thank you once more, Richard Lighthouse. This has been an absolutely mind-blowing interview, and I think one of the most eye-opening that I've ever done in my life. And even I didn't know, or could even, you know, imagine that this technology is now fully active and has been so for several decades. So thank you very much once more, and I hope to see you soon on an interview. And I thank also our listeners. Please spread the message, please subscribe, please tell all your family and friends that this is serious, this is happening right now, and you are all targeted individuals. If you know it or not, you are all vulnerable, and you basically are all suffering cumulative brain damage from what's happening to us all. So everybody, thank Richard one more time, and goodbye, and hope to see you soon. Thank you.
Thank you, Catherine. Thank you.